see what is going on here. Okay. All right, so we're recording now. So Happy New Year and welcome to L&M 4, or Theory 4 really. But this is the combined music history and music theory track. For those of you who are reviewing on YouTube, you will find that obviously we're recording the classes just as we did last semester. We have a few new students, either transfer students or students who are coming back after having been away for a while, such as Mattia. And then everything is different when you come back. This course is certainly, anyways. Okay, Carolee, great. Hi, Carolee. Hey.
Hi, Dr. Lars.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, we're just getting started.
Okay.
So, yeah. I think it's gonna go down. Let me just send one message to my... Yeah, I think it's going to go down this way, that theory is going to be Monday and Tuesday. And then music history is going to be on Wednesday and Thursday for the two sections. But something has occurred because Carlos Cuestas is down with the virus. He has COVID-19 and has been really sick for a couple of weeks. He was able to join me this morning just to greet the students, and then he had to go back to bed. So what tends to happen at night is that his temperature is rising and he feels really rotten at night. He is topped out at 102.5 Fahrenheit, which is a very, very high temperature. So this is no joke, as you well know, and it's still very contagious, and we hope that all the best for him. We've been giving him our best wishes and our prayers all day. And I'm gonna just outline some of the things that are happening. Hold on one second. Let me just try to see what I can do with this. Just bear in mind that this is the first class in this section here. So I'm just gonna try to see who is in the class and who is not, etc., etc., etc. And we have more people coming in. Okay. All right. Just see. Okay, so now we have 5. So Ovidio, let me just deal with you for a second. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're done with theory, right?
Right, sir.
So you don't need to be here, right?
Actually, I failed theory 4. Theory 4, I've got to retake it. Is this what this is?
This, well, it's L&M 4, yes, but it's the theory portion of it is theory 4, yes. Let me just see if I can put you in a breakout room. I just need, oh, I can't do that because I am, okay. Okay. All right, so you're officially signed up for this class?
Correct.
Okay, fine, good. All right, so the first order of business is that as everyone is joining, hey, Judy, let me just check in. Hey, good to see you all. Okay, so the first order of business is that we have to get keyboard studies, keyboard proficiency lined up with this class. And the first thing that we're doing in L&M 4, hold on, is some 8 sight reading, not in this class, but I'm going to prepare you for it. And then you're going to follow up with Professor Margaret, who's doing the keyboard stuff. So we're doing some clef reading, so C clef reading and some atonal sight reading. That's going to be a lot of fun, and and I'm going to prepare you for that. And the second item that we're going to be doing today and for the foreseeable future is what we call augmented sixth chords. So we're going to plow right into that. Let me just switch my position here. Those of you who've been with me before, you know that I switch over the camera to point to my board on the wall. And so I'm just going to cut out for like 20 seconds and be back with you. Okay. Okay, we're back at the wall. I don't know why you guys are going in and out of the waiting room all the time. This happened to 2 students. Is there any particular reason? Do you get booted off? Oh, somebody left again. Do you get booted off, or what happens?
It could just be your Wi-Fi.
I'm down at the okay, so the Wi-Fi wherever you guys are, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that explains it, because I'm at the campus, as you can see. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to go through some notational issues regarding the C clef. You have no doubt come across these different clefs, so I'm just going to sort of run them down, and we'll see what we have. This is the treble clef, as you know, or the G clef. And say, for instance, if I just write in a note here, that will be in this clef, the note D. There's no great mystery here. In this clef, that same note would be an F. As also you no doubt know that this is called the F clef, and it outlines this line here, which is the note F. And so if I have a clef that looks like this, this is called the C clef, this is called the G clef, and this is called the F clef, or treble and bass clef, and this is called the C clef. So wherever these 2 little squiggles here meet, that would be the note C, or middle C. C4 would be that note, and that I can move around. So for instance, if I have it like this, and let's say I write up this note, that would be the note C. So C, and this would be F, and this would be D, right? And C, and C. So if I were to write in the same note for all of the clefs here, then you can see that the game is one of transposition, for instance. Now you have the same note on all 4 clefs here. This would be the note D, as you no doubt know, F, and this one here, I would have to transpose up 1 step. So this one would be an E, and this one here, as I said before, would be the note C, because I'm now transposing 1 step down. Let me isolate these C clefs. We don't need to deal with these guys right now because you already know them. But let me deal with the C clefs because pretty soon Professor Margaret is going to drill this in keyboard class with you. It's not going to be very difficult. I mean, we're asking for competence, not necessarily that you have to be able to read fluently in the C clefs, but you have to really know how to find the notes and what they're called and where they are on the piano. Particularly if you want to go into grad studies in graduate school, that will be a prerequisite that you can read and analyze scores that make use of the C clefs. This one here is also called the alto clef or the viola clef. If you play the viola, you'll be playing out of this clef all the time. So if this note is a C, then it follows that this note is a D, this note is an E, this note is an F. So you can see that really what you're doing here, you're just transposing up one step. You don't have to worry about whether it's a whole step or a half step because the key signature will take care of that. You simply have to say, okay, every B, if you relate it back to the G clef, every B is a C. That means every C is a D, every D is an E, and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. So simply just transpose up one step compared to the G clef.
Question:
Go ahead.
Would a singer, in which frame would a singer read off this clef?
They wouldn't. It's not for singers. I mean, if you play the viola, you'll be reading out of this clef. Yeah. Okay, so that's the alto clef or the viola clef. I mean, worry not too much about this because you're going to be drilled in this in keyboard practice. That's kind of where it's at in a way. But let's say you finish your studies here, you go to grad school, and you come out and teach in a high school program, for instance, where you have some band practice, and you have, let's say, a couple of violin players and a viola player. Then you have to be able to analyze the score and to know if they're playing the right or the wrong notes. I mean, basically, you have to be able to read the viola clef in order to instruct a group of students playing with these instruments. There are other instruments played, like there's some other wind instruments that are playing out of this clef, but the most common instrument to play out of this is the viola. So I can basically place this wherever I want. Sometimes you see them down here, and I'm gonna talk about why we have these transposing C clefs. This one here would be the cello clef, or what is also known as the tenor clef. And so if this line here is a C, where these two guys are meeting, then you will understand very, very quickly that, so that's a C, that's a D, that's an E. So in other words, you're transposing down one step. The higher it is, the more you transpose down, so to speak. But these are the two most common clefs that we are going to be dealing with in the beginning. So in the cello clef or the tenor clef, you simply just transpose one down. Every D is a C. So this one here would really be a C, this one would be a D, this one would be an E, and so forth. And let's say you have a key signature of, just write in here, of, let's say, two flats, for instance, like in B flat major or G minor, then this one here would be an E flat. I mean, the key signatures will follow, obviously. This is just a way of notating things, and I'll now explain why we're using these C clefs. They're not used as much as they used to be, but in the olden days, let's say in the Baroque period, for instance, that's when they used C clefs a lot, and they transposed them up and down as they needed to. Because if you're writing in hand, for instance, and you probably know this from your own handwriting, even with a pencil, that this is very cumbersome. Let's say you write for a flute, for instance, and you have to write in all these ledger lines, or you write for, let's say, a bass instrument and you're still writing out, or guitar, for instance. The guitar is a real bugger because we're playing out of the G clef, right? But because we're not playing out of two systems, we don't use the bass clef for guitar music. We have to write all these ledger lines in to get all the bass notes in, and that's really cumbersome. But imagine that you're writing with a feather, you know, like a quill and ink. You don't want to write out a lot of ledger lines. So therefore, when you ran out of the system here, you simply just write a new C clef, and that means you can write within the system. That's how it works, right? Or let's say that you don't want to write ledger lines either above or below. You can move this thing around to put it wherever you need it to be. So that was a skill in the olden days that people could actually read out of these clefs and transpose. As I said, we just have to know the basics, and you just have to be able to orient yourself at the keyboard and knowing where the notes are, because otherwise it would be difficult for you to function, let's say, in a school system where you have high school bands or any kind of band. Or, of course, if you go into higher education, this is a real must. I mean, you must have a graduate degree or 2 or 3 or whatever to be a contender for a college job. But even for Department of Education jobs, you will need to be quite fluent in this and be able to score read somewhat. I mean, not necessarily sight reading at a full score, but be able to know where the notes are. I know at Brooklyn College, where I also teach, I know the pedagogy student, I mean the music education majors, they have to be able to score read at the piano. Otherwise, they're not passing their courses because that's a requirement from the Department of Education. If you go into a private school, slightly different because they can bend the rules to suit whatever style of music that they're dealing mostly with. But if you're in a DOE, Department of Education job, one of the qualifying skills that you must present is the ability to score read at the piano. All right, so this is the semester to do that. We've got 2 semesters left, 4 and 5. 5 is really a review course in many ways. We're introducing as many new topics as we can, but we have a whole semester to sort of review this. So it's a good place to get started with this. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. In fact, you're right. As I was just this summer, I had a gig at my cousin's wedding, and I had a viola player and I had a trumpetist, and they were doing just this. I remember I sat there and I had to bring out my Sibelius to transpose, but you're right about this. I remember a viola and even a trumpeter knew these things, and they were.
Some of them do. That's right. It depends on how your trumpet is tuned, right? But horn players very often play out of the C clef. They play out of the cello clef or the tenor clef very often. I mean, any instrument can do this, really. I mean, it's just that notational conventions don't necessarily, like if you have piano music, you will very rarely see C clefs unless they're referring to a specific instrument that you're trying to replicate on the piano. Like if, again, score reading, a must. I mean, we must be able to do this. And for analysis class, if we are analyzing string quartets, for instance, there will be a viola part and very often a cello part that is not written out in the bass clef. So, you know, it's just an essential skill to be able to do. We're going to start gently with this, right? It's not something that by next week, you know, you're going to be sent off to the sausage factory if you can't read out of the tenor clef. I mean, it doesn't really work like that. But what I was about to say is that a very, very good resource for this is theoria.com. and then go to the section. You'll see this in the syllabus. You know, there's a whole resource sort of package there listed in the syllabus of training programs that can train you in recognizing the notes in C-clefs. It's just called clef reading. Yeah, we good with that?
Yes.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, so Theoria.com was actually instituted by a former NIAC student, and Sue Talley had a hand in designing the content. And if you're Spanish speaking, it's a great great tool for you, because it's not a misspelling of Theoria. No, it's Theoria.com, because you can choose which language out of Spanish or English that you would like to study in, which is great. Okay, so go to that, drill yourself in clef reading, and then try to translate it to the piano. It's really essential that we are able to navigate where these notes are in relation to each other. In summary, that's a C clef. You can move it up or down, whatever. Wherever these two prongs are meeting is middle C. Got it? Okay, so the next little item that we're going to do, we're going to have a short class today, because I know that a lot of people have had difficulty registering. So as you can see, we're not a full class, obviously, with 5 people. So a lot of new people are going to join us, hopefully next week. So I'm not going to roll out a whole bunch of new information that we just have to repeat. But the other essential element that we're going to start with, and that Professor Margaret is following up in keyboard class, is what we call augmented 6 chords. So I'm going to outline what that is. Now, there are various ways of teaching this. Very often in the past, I've sort of started with a big exploration of certain historical trends, etc., etc. And so, in other words, giving you the big picture. It's a little bit like, let me just sit down for a second, because I've been teaching all day. It's a little bit like cooking. I think most of you know that that I'm fond of making food analogies in teaching, because it's a sort of amateur hobby of mine, and particularly of my wife's, that we cook together and enjoy that. So when you make soup stock, for instance, what you're doing, let's say you're making chicken stock. You take bits and pieces of a chicken, meat, bones, skin, what have you, and dump it into a pot of water with some vegetables and a little bit of spices, not too much. You don't want to add too much salt, but you start boiling this stuff, right? And it starts to congeal and it starts to integrate with each other, all these flavors. And you can keep boiling this until you're left with a very, very small amount of liquid that has been reduced into its essence. And basically the taste alone, you have more and more flavor concentration the more you boil it. And what you're left with is actually a soup stock. So a stock cube is this little solid form of version of a soup. So basically when you have a stock cube this size, it's probably from, let's say, 2 liters of water that's been boiled down to its essence. Now, when you make soup, you can either start by making your stock, or you can take the bouillon cube, the soup stock cube, and start with that. And then flesh it out. You can add more and more water to it, and then you can add your soup, whatever vegetables or grains or meats or whatever you want to put in your soup. You can start it either way. Either way works really well. So I'm saying this because very, very often I start with a big picture. I think you know me, most of you know me well by now. I start with a big picture. Sometimes the big picture is easy to understand. And then we break down this big picture into its component parts. In this case, I found it more productive to start the other way around, that I start with a detail. And then, so I start with his soup stock cube, right? And now we're going to cook from that, as opposed to going the other way. because sometimes the details are easier to grasp. They are more handy in a way, and they are more manageable than to think, okay, this is a big picture and there's a lot of elements and I'm not really sure which one is more important. So I'm going to start with the detail as regards the Augmented 6 course. The idea is that Professor Margaret, again, is going to follow up with us and drill so that you can create all these chords in basically in any key. They all obviously sound the same regardless of key. That's just a question of transposition level. But they all behave in a similar way. So I'm going to start with just one of them. There are actually 4 Augmented 6 chords. They appear to be different, but they're really not. They're actually doing the same thing, and so they work in the same way. They sound a little bit different, but they're derived from the same stock, if you pardon the fruit analogy again. So we're going to create what we call the Italian Augmented 6. So 6 plus means Augmented 6. I'm just going to do a little sidebar here and write up an interval like this. That interval is, or these 2 notes are 6 steps apart from each other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I know it's odd that we start with 1 and say that that's a step. Be that as it may, just know that because we're not starting with 0, we end up with what we call a 6th. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In other words, if I wrote up a scale, the 6th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, would be that F. So therefore, we call this interval a 6th. That's the name of that interval. We can go into sort of peeling off the level of detail regarding this interval, why it is a minor 6th or a major 6th or whatever. This happens to be a minor 6th, so we write that up like this. M, so lowercase m6 is this interval here. If I do this to it, I've made it bigger because I have removed these 2 notes 1 step or 1/2 step from each other, and therefore it is now a major 6th. And I can make it even larger by moving this note down by a 1/2 step, and now it is what we call an augmented 6. An augmented 6th. So if you see chords where you have flats and sharps at the same time, you know that there's something going on with that chord. It's either a diminished 7 chord, or it's an augmented 6 chord, or something like that. It is a heavily altered chord. And we'll get to what it does and how it does it and all that. For now, we're just very, very content with just being able to spell them out. That's all I'm requiring from this moment forward until we can do that safely, right? We just have to be able to spell these things. That's not a big deal. It's like, we're just taking the soup stock cube and we're pouring some water on it. Most people can make soup that way, right? That's not too difficult, really. The other way around is more difficult. That's not to say that everything is better to work from the detail and out. It isn't. Very often the big picture is easier to understand. It's actually easier than understanding the detail. And the detail will be a result of understanding where we're going to end up. But in the key of C, I'm just going to take that as my point of departure. We have scale degree, flat 6 in the bass, and we have scale degree sharp 4 in the soprano, and then we have scale degree 1 and scale degree 1 as the inner voices. Remember that. We're going to have it so many times that you're going to get sick of it very quickly. But that's an easy one because I can add scale degree 1 in the key of C would be C. Scale degree 1 in the key of C would also be C, obviously. So far, so good, right? That's not actually very hard. As you can see, you know, not very hard. Sharp 4 and flat 6. Okay, if I look at this, what interval or what scale degree do I have in the middle of these two numbers here? If you see the number 4 and you see the number 6, what figure is missing in the middle?
5.
Exactly. And here you have scale degree 5. We will find scale degree sharp 4 and scale degree flat 6 by going to 5. It's actually very, very simple. Now, all you have to ask yourself, so we have 5 here in the middle, right? Here is oriented sort of from low to high, right? But what I'm doing here is just orienting it up and down because that's kind of how we understand music to work, right? Notation. Scale degree sharp 4 would be a half step below 5. So in the key of C, let's write up our C major scale. I can just use this one here. That's all we need actually. Because here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? What would that be? A half step. So here's 5, right? What is a half step below G?
F sharp.
F sharp. Or if you thought it was G flat, that would be flat 5, right? It's the same note as this one here, but it's important to spell it the right way. It's just sort of, you know, sometimes things can only be understood with the right spelling, right? If you say you need a break, it's this one here you need, right? If you're careening down a slope in a car, it may be this one here, but usually when you say, give me a break, we don't need actually to rip the brake pedal out of the car and give it to you. But you can't tell the difference. The context will reveal whether it's this one or this one. Do you understand? That's the way language works. And there are many, many, many other examples of this where spelling is important. It's not just a matter of convention and being a good student or whatever. It's also a matter of understanding what the words are doing. Okay, so scale degree 5, flat 6 would be a half step up from this one here, but it has to be spelled with the next letter name. So it would be A flat. Do you see that? Because here's 5 again, half step up from 5 is either G sharp, but that will be sharp 5. Do you understand? You have to go to the next letter name here. That will be A, and then it has to be a half step up. So it's not A, but it's A flat. Now in this key, it actually works out beautifully that sharp 4 is spelled with a sharp. Cool, right? And flat 6 is spelled with a flat. So that's, again, that's very cool. And that's easy to understand, but it's not always like that, for instance. In the key of F, for instance, let me just, this one here, write it down, review the tape, whatever. You'll get a sheet, by the way, that summarizes all of this. Right now, we're just concerned about this one augmented 6 chord called the Italian 6. Why it's called Italian, by the way, somebody asked me in the morning class, why is it called the Italian 6? And there really isn't a good answer to that. So I'm not going to make one sort of rubbish answer up because I don't know. Nobody knows. It's just, you know, it's just a convention. We identify it as the Italian 6 chord. The great thing about this one is that you have 2 scale degrees, 1 for the inner voices. So that makes it really, really easy. At least you've got 2 of the notes, you know, down the pike. There's nothing to make a mistake about. It's very easy. But let's say in the key of F, for instance, I'm going to do a double bar here. and then do one in F major. Now the two inner voices are easy again, because F, oh sorry, I'm in the wrong clef here. F and F. Those are going to be the two inner voices. And as you well know, whenever I've sort of coached you in writing, add the stems right away, because now you know that this is not a bass note, it is a tenor note. Now you know that this one here is not a soprano, it is an alto, because you've written the stem in. And so nothing in this clef goes below this note. Nothing in this clef goes above this note. Yeah? So that's an F, two scale degree, that's scale degree 1, and that's also scale degree 1. Now I have to find, let's start with the flat 6. I'm going to write up, actually I'm just going to do it over here, right? Oops. And write up my F major scale. That'll be F major, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's my F major scale. Now I'm going to find flat 6. So I go to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 5. And 6 would be this one. This is regular 6. What would be flat 6 in this key? That would be this note, and then moved a half step, so it's only a half step away from 5. So that means it's not D, but D flat. Yeah? You with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Straightforward, right? It's actually very easy. And now I'm going to add, for the soprano, I'm going to add sharp 4. Okay? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's B flat, and I have to raise that. How do I do that? Not by writing a sharp. I know we call it sharp 4, but I remove the flat.
And it's just regular.
Exactly. So it's a B natural. That is sharp 4 or raised 4. The reason why we don't say lowered 6 and raised 4 is that it doesn't roll off the tongue very easily. So you think, or many classical people think, that only jazz theory names things with names that are sort of easy to say, but are not consistent with their spelling. In traditional theory, you find the same issues. We call this one sharp 4, right? It has to be called raised 4 if we want to be more accurate, but we don't need to be more accurate. This is, and it will be oddly enough understood like this. This is how we do it, right? We just have to understand that the notational conventions are not always completely conducive to what we're trying to find. Okay, so that will be an Italian augmented 6 chord in the key of F, and you can see that the D flat and the B natural, you see you have a flat here, and you have a lowered note and a raised note in the same interval. That will be an augmented interval. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Good. Let's do it one more time. I'm going to erase this one here. But that's the notation of it. You know the scale degree sign with the little caret on top, the hat on top? If that says sharp 4, it just means that the 4 scale degree in that key has been raised, and it's only a half step away from 5, okay, as opposed to a whole step. Everything comes back to the understanding of how the major scale works. That's why it's so important that all these sort of essential skill sets are drilled in early, and that they're consistent and that they're strong. This, by the way, I can move this one up if I want. I understand that that's the same note as it is in this key here, but I can move it up. That doesn't really matter. The voicing, the layout of the chord doesn't really need to conform to anything. So this one is scale degree 1 as well. This one is flat 6. Italian organized 6 chord. Okay, let's do one more together, and then let's just pack up shop and say we've done it for today, because this is the topic that I promised Professor Margaret that I was gonna develop with you, and then she'll follow up. It's more difficult for her to sort of get all this stuff out of the way, you know, and it's really not her end of it. Her end of it is basically to drill this stuff with you at the keyboard. Okay, let's do one more together. Give me a key. I don't really, so somebody come up with a key.
A.
Huh?
The
A
key.
minor. A minor.
No, well, they're all in the minor mode, actually. So this is actually in C minor, but that doesn't really matter. You can also use them in the major mode, but they are really minor mode progressions. But come up with a key. Letter name.
E flat.
E flat. Yeah. E flat. Okay. So we know what the inner voices are going to do, because that one is easy, and this one is easy as well, right? Here is scale degree 1, scale degree 1. No problem, right? Now I want to add flat 6. And how do I do that? Well, I go to scale degree 5. What is scale degree 5 in the key of E flat? Major and minor, so because it doesn't really matter. You can either write up your scale, that's fine, you know.
Flat.
Very good. B flat. And you don't need to go further than that, actually. You can just go from scale degree 1 and up to 5. Okay, here is B flat, which is scale degree 5. Now I have to go a half step up to the next note.
Be natural.
C natural. So we know it's some type of C, right? Because this is 5, yeah? I have to go a half step up from B flat.
Aren't you just raising it?
What's that?
You going up a whole half? You going up
No,
a whole
I'm going up a half step because we know the flat 6 is a half step away from 5, right? This is scale degree 5. What is a half step up from B flat?
B.
D natural.
Not C natural.
D natural. D.
Natural.
D, it can't be D, right?
B as
Oh,
in
no,
boy.
no.
This is B.
No.
This is B flat. Okay, let's do it this way. I know you know it, and very soon you can calculate this. Go a half step up from B.
That's going to be C.
Good. Go a half step up from B flat.
B.
No,
B natural.
no.
Oh, C flat.
Yes.
Sorry.
It has to
Okay.
start with the next letter name. Otherwise, it's some variation of 5, right? I
Yeah.
understand the B natural, but that's raised 5. That's not the same. I mean, it's the same sound as flat 6. We understand that. But you have to really keep your head straight for this. If a half step up from B is C, yes? Then a half step up from B flat is C flat. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to add it down here because I can separate the bass and the 3 upper voices. That is not a problem at all. But we understand that it's a C flat. And very convenient that scale degree or your scale degree flat 6 will be a C flat. I mean, it's easy to understand that flat 6 is spelled with a flat, but just be aware that that's not always the case. And the real professional skill is to be able to recognize the difference between spelling and actual pitch and be able to do it right. It's not really a big deal. I know a lot of teachers make this sound incredibly difficult, and it just isn't. I mean, if this is if you make it sound difficult, or if you're teaching it in such a way that it's difficult, it's because you're not doing it right. Either you want to show off how incredibly brilliant you are, but since this is not very difficult, that's not very brilliant to show off on that. Okay, so now we have to go up from sharp 4 or raised 4. Again, my scale degree 5, I'm not going to write up the whole scale, is B flat, yeah?
Yes.
So B flat is scale degree 5. That is always our point of orientation. Do not go to scale degree 4 and think you can sort of waffle your way around that, or go to scale degree 6 and just lower it. It doesn't work like that. You have to go up to scale degree 5 because scale degree 5 is a reliable navigation point. Okay, half step below B flat. Because that would be sharp 4. Do you understand? Whole, whole, half, and then whole again. Right now I've written out the scale. So it's A flat. That's regular 4. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How is this?
What was the question?
How do I raise scale degree 4?
Go up a half. You
You
make it
You
natural.
kick it up a half step by doing what?
Making it natural.
Yep. That's it. Easy peasy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if we had just a little more time, and if it hadn't been sort of late at night, I could actually do all 4 augmented 6 chords with you, and you would know how to spell them in every single key in one lesson. Sometimes in some schools, this because people insist on doing all sorts of weird examples in F minor and some obscure boarding quartet or whatever, you know, and all of a sudden it's very, very difficult. And it takes a whole semester. That's complete rubbish. I mean, you know, you can learn to do this in one lesson in less than an hour. But all I want you to do is to be able to spell the Italian augmented 6 chord. The great news about that is that regardless of key, you've got 2 friends here, scale degree 1, right? Let's get a little preview on the other ones. The French augmented 6 chord is spelled with, instead of having scale degree 1 and scale degree 1, you have one of them do scale degree 2. What would that be? Well, if I turn this into a French augmented 6 chord, I'll just go a whole step up from E flat, which is F. That's the French augmented 6 chord, etc., etc., etc. We don't need to go that step because this is really the most important thing. To be able to navigate these things, you just have to keep your head cool and understand what a half step is, what a whole step is. That's music theory for you right there. These are the 2 elements you have to be able to spell flawlessly from any given point. What is a half step? What is a whole step? Now, that's very obvious on the keyboard, right? Because you can see how far away a whole step and a half step is. And that's why we reinforced it on the keyboard. You want to do one more? One more?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to select the key. G, yeah? Okay, we know that inner voices would be G and G. That's a given. You can sort of start there. And for the purpose of spelling, it's all good. Now we have to go to scale degree 5 to find sharp 4 and flat 6. Scale degree 5 in the key of G would be 1, 2, or 5, right? So this one here, you just lock.
D.
Who's okay? That's funny. Nobody's microphone is open. Okay, so this is 5, yeah? Scale degree 5 is D. What is a half step up from D?
E flat.
natural.
E flat. Very good.
Yeah.
E flat, and that goes in the bass because that's flat 6. What is a half step down from D?
C double sharp.
No. Don't
C sharp.
Oh wait.
C sharp.
C flat.
Oh wait, yeah, C sharp. I'm so sorry.
It's some type of C, right? I mean, just use your common logical sense here. It's one step down from D. So if this is D, then the previous letter in the alphabet would be C. between C and D is a whole step. So you can't change this one here, right? So you got to raise this one to make it as close to D as you can get. That will be C sharp, yeah?
Yeah.
Easy. Lemon squeezy. Very good. So on Monday, I can give you an assignment, say, write out the Italian augmented sixth chord in this, that, and the other key, and it wouldn't be a problem. And it really wouldn't be a problem. But let's say we're doing it on Tuesday or whatever. You know, let's say we're doing this one more week. That wouldn't be too bad either, would it?
No.
Remember that.
No.
Remember that in some schools this take a whole semester. I don't know why it does, but you know, there you go. Okay, so now you can do that Italian augmented sixth chord. Follow up with Professor Margaret, and we're sort of officially done here. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Adios.
Dr. Lars. Dr.
You're
Lars.
welcome.
Dr.
See you.
Lars.
See you either Monday or Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday for this class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr.
Very cool.
Dr.
Fiona.
Lars. Oh boy. Dr. Lars.
This, by the way, is considered the top end of tonal theory.
Okay.
It doesn't get sort of much worse than this. There's a few more details to, and there's certain keys where you have this one here would be a double flat, for instance, and this one would be a double sharp, etc., etc. But I mean, it's pretty logical, you know. So it's pretty obvious when it's what, right? Okay.
Dr.
Guys,
Lars.
see you on Tuesday.
Dr. Lars, I wanted to ask you something. I had sat with Margaret and she cleared me from all the piano. Is there still another proficiency I need to do?
No, if you've done that, it's up to you really. You don't need it. You cleared your proficiency, you're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it was still a good idea to do this at the piano, right?
Oh yeah, no problem.
But it's time now.
All right.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
See you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes.
I'm gonna check in my how do you call it, in my catalog whether I have no problem taking this class, but can I actually count this class for theory 4 and I don't have to take theory 4 again?
Yeah, I think this is why you were put in this class.
Okay. And I remember one time you filled up a little square where with all the prerequisites for Italian, French, German, and all that. Remember that? So do you still have it somewhere in your files? Can I please have it?